Like many of you, I heard about Cyberpunk for the first time during both the 2018 and 2019's E3 reveal. The trailers looked incredible, and with CD Projekt Red basking in the success and reputation of delivering good, quality games, like the Witcher series, this was a massive departure from what I personally thought they would do next. But curious enough, the Cyberpunk story actually begins almost 40 years ago. Cyberpunk 2077 is actually based on a tabletop game, in universe created by Mike Pondsmith, this guy, which dates all the way back to 1988. It's a sort of dystopian and futuristic version of Dungeons & Dragons. Probably a very simplistic way to describe it, but it is what it is. Mike actually came into the development of Cyberpunk in 2012 as a consultant to oversee the game world aspect and mechanics, since his input was clearly valuable to the team over at CD Projekt Red, and they wanted to keep the game close to the source material. But back to the present day. Over time, the propaganda around the game started to build a lot of interest and hype, skyrocketing with the reveal of Keanu Reeves becoming one of the key characters in the game. The internet went nuts.
Oh shit, is that Keanu Reeves? No!
What? What?
Wait, what the
What
fuck?
the fuck?
Whoa! Whoa!
And also delivering one of the most wholesome E3 moments of all time. Everyone wanted to get their hands on the game. Everything about it looked right. The casting, the music, the overall design of the game, it just worked. Nothing was to prepare us for what was about to come. Initially, Cyberpunk was set to release on the 16th of April 2020, but something kept happening. The game got delayed a total of 3 times, which in my eyes, although it sucks to wait for a game that you've been excited to play, if it means the game will be ready and a finished product by the time it's released, fine by me. Then the 10th of December of 2020 comes around. It was a shit show.
B, the double tap to...
What the fuck you doing?
Dude, what? What?
Hey! What is going on? Who's T-posing on the bike?
The game was riddled with bugs, and a good amount of people were pissed, which can still be seen in the review ratio online to this day. It was sad, because you could clearly see the game had potential, but it was not ready for release when it actually ended up releasing to the public. Probably one of the big reasons why they kept delaying the game, but you can only do that so many times until people start getting really annoyed and refunding pre-orders. Majority of the times, you might be able to look past it, but some of the bugs were obvious and just outright bad. But we all know the story. The game had a rocky release, but the question is, would Cyberpunk do a No Man's Sky and end up fixing all of its shortcomings and becoming what we had all been waiting for? Or would it just flop and disappear into oblivion? Over time, CD Projekt Red released 7 major updates ranging from 1.1 till 2.1, and a DLC. Each of these made substantial changes. In the beginning of the game's history, it had a major focus on performance issues and making sure the game ran okay on all platforms, subsequently shifting to making sure the game-breaking bugs were out of sight. The most important ones definitely came during 2022. They fixed a lot of the AI in the game, including cops, addition of new perks, the map was better. Overall, these changes brought the game back to life. Also, the release of the Cyberpunk Edgerunners anime on Netflix was really well timed since it came out in September of 2022, which was around the same time of one of these patches. But it was also an incredible experience. I definitely recommend if you haven't watched it yet. In the end, Cyberpunk had its redemption. CD Projekt Red's decision to double down and refusing to give up on this game and making it a success story is not only inspiring, but commendable. Pavel Sasko, the associate game director for Cyberpunk, even wrote on Twitter thanking the community for the second chance and admitting that he had been very close to giving up. But I'm glad they didn't, because now I get to make this video. When you first get into Cyberpunk 2077, the journey starts with a decision. Who are you and where do you come from? Your first choice is your life path, which defines your first few minutes in the game and a lot of your character's background throughout the rest of the story. It mostly has an impact on your dialogue options. Each of these provide a different insight into the life of the people of Night City and the surrounding areas. It fleshes out their backgrounds, their culture, and the overall way of life. You can choose the following. Corpo, this is the corporate character. V begins as an employee of the Arasaka Corporation. He does a sketchy gig for his boss, which lands him losing his job, and now he must learn how to live without a corporate ladder to climb. Second, there's the Nomad. The Nomad is an individual who usually belongs to a clan, a tribe, a family, I guess you could say. V begins as someone who's turned their back on their clan and seeks to build a new life in Night City. And third, we have Street Kid. Street Kid is someone who's lived their whole lives in Night City. They know the streets, the gangs, the slang. They are in touch with the inner workings of the city and how things go down around town. Out of these three, I've only ever played Corpo and the Nomad, but I'll definitely do a future third playthrough as a Street Kid. I actually like this feature in the game. It really does provide an insight into the different ways of thinking depending on your origins in the universe of Cyberpunk. It's a world inflated with story, and a lot of it is easy to miss. But this feature being at the forefront of the game provides some level of insight regardless if you're someone who likes to read all of the articles and text in the game or just wants to shoot shit and have fun. All of these intros lead you to meeting one important character, Jackie Wells. Jackie is an ambitious merc who above all else cares about friendship, family, and loyalty. He's a funny guy for most of the time, but he gets serious when it's necessary, and you can count on him to back you up. His main goal, though, is to become one of Night City's legendary mercs. In the case of the Nomad Path, you meet him while running a smuggling gig that will lead you into Night City, and to cut a long story short, you basically become best friends. For most of the early game, you spend it together. You run gigs as a coupled up group of mercs and quickly start to gain reputation as reliable, and that usually leads to more gigs with a better pay. But with better pay comes bigger risks. One day, Jackie comes to you with a gig, one that's supposed to launch us to, as he says, the big leagues. But first we have to meet a fixer, by the name of Dexter Deshawn. Before I keep going, you need to understand what a fixer is and does. A fixer is someone who works as an intermediary between a client that wants a job done and a merc that wants to get the job done. In a nutshell, they fix jobs, and that's where the name comes from. Typically, fixers are people that are ambitious but not fit for either merc work or climbing the corporate ladder as a corpo. So fixing is a good enough in-between job if you have the brains for it. Before we're able to either accept the gig or not, Deshawn wants to meet us, basically trying to assess if we're cut out for the job, and, as an extra, to see if he likes us. We end up impressing the guy enough for him to give us the heist, but we have to do a to-do list before we crack on with the gig. First, we're to visit a group called the Maelstrom. Deshawn made a purchase from the leader of the group for a military-grade robot that will help us with a heist, also known as Flathead. Second, we're to meet with a client, Evelyn Parker. Evelyn is a doll. That means that she works in the pleasure industry, if you catch my meaning. But she's always wanted more out of life, mainly to become a professional actress. That's why this gig is important. Evelyn was working with a clan of Night City going by the name of Voodoo Boys. They were aware of her affiliation as a consort and frequent guest of Yorinobu Arasaka, the heir to the Arasaka Company, meaning that they wanted her to acquire a brain dance, which is essentially a recording of Yorinobu's hotel suite, in order to find a biochip owned by the Arasaka Company, which was high in value. The contents of this chip will become very important later. With her finding out the value of this biochip, she decided that she wanted to steal it for her own profit, contacted Netwatch, offering to provide the relic in exchange for money, protection, and a new identity. When we meet up with her, we also meet a braindance techie, Julie Alvarez, which will become one of the most important side characters in the game. Evelyn wants us to analyze the braindance, become familiar with the suite, so we can pull off the heist successfully. But there's one more thing. She wants to cut Dexter out of the picture, making the heist a split between us and her. I can't blame her. Dexter has a reputation as a famous fixer, but that fame also includes him as being involved in a whole lot of more shit than he likes to play out. In a nutshell, the heist is supposed to go like this. First, Delamain, a cab service, is supposed to pick us up from the Afterlife Club and take us to Konpeki Plaza Hotel. We make it through security with our fake identities and make our way up to our room. Upon arriving to our room, we use the Flathead, our little robot, to take out the Netrunner that is used as a 24/7 security at the hotel. That should allow us to get into Yorinobu's Arasaka suite without a hitch. We make our way up, grab the biochip from the safe, and get out. Simple and sweet. Now, we know that if everything had gone to plan, the game would be over in about 2 hours, and we can't have that. Everything seems to go well until we make it up to Yorinobu's room. As we are getting the biochip, it looks as if someone VIP is about to visit the hotel, and it gets the entire staff alert, and Saburo makes his way up to his room unexpectedly. Who's paying a visit? Saburo Arasaka, the emperor of the Arasaka Corporation, quite literally one of, if not the most powerful man on the planet. He's come to take back the biochip from his son, since Yorinobu had stolen it in the first place. One thing you have to understand is that there is some sort of family feud between these two. Yorinobu absolutely despises his father. It could be because he just plain didn't like him, but the truth is that it seems as if he's a child whose main concern is to not live in his father's shadow. He's so desperate to prove himself as a person capable of building something for himself that he even created his own gang that goes by the name of the Steel Dragons. Just before Saburo and Yorinobu make it to the room, both us and Jackie hide inside the main column in the room. From the inside, we're able to see what's about to happen. Saburo orders both Atom Smasher and Takamura, which is both of their bodyguards, out of the room so they can have a conversation in private. What seems to be a normal but heated conversation quickly becomes into a successful attempt at murder. Yorinobu kills his father, demands a lockdown of the hotel, reports to Takamura that Saburo has been poisoned, and we're essentially fucked. To escape this, we need a miracle. Everyone leaves the room, we make our way out of the balcony and try to reach the emergency exit, but before we do, an Arasaka drone finds us and shoots at us. We jump and, luckily, end up crashing in a safe place. Although Jackie got shot and the relic container got damaged and starts to lose integrity of the chip. Jackie slots the biochip into his neural slot, and we make our way out of the hotel. This section can either be done guns blazing or stealthily. It's quite well made, although it's quite hard to go through it completely stealth mode considering that our cyberware is very rudimentary at this stage and enemies can spot us quite easily. When we make it down to the car park, Delamain picks us up and we make a run for it. Finally, we're safe. Although we do get chased by some Arasaka drones hellbent on killing us. Once we're out of harm's way, we finally are able to notice that Jackie is not doing so good. He's lost a lot of blood. He passes the biochip to us since he's not in good condition, and like that, he dies. Our best friend dies just before the finishing line of his biggest dream, to reach the major leagues. We make it to the No-Tell Motel, where we're supposed to meet Dex after the heist is done. Once we make it to the room, we see that he's obviously not happy. We're all over the news and he says,
Anyone with so much as a pinky toe dipped in this mess is as good as dead.
It doesn't matter that we didn't kill Saburo, it looks as if we did. Before we're supposed to discuss the next step, he tells us to go and wash up. We're dirty and full of blood. We do just that, and on our way out, we get smacked. There's no way he'd let us go that easily. He's cutting loose ends, everything that would lead anyone back to him. His bodyguard hands him his weapon and boom. All of a sudden, we seem to be living a completely different life. We seem to be some sort of rock star having their last gig. We blink and then we're backstage, about to get into a helicopter and head to the Arasaka Tower? There's guns and everything seems to be pointing to the fact that this is a heist, but everything looks different. We make our way deeper into the building and plant a bomb in the elevator, but before we evacuate, we need to upload a virus into Arasaka's network. We get that done and make our way back to the helicopter, but we get caught and incapacitated by Atom Smasher. But weirdly, he looks different, less chromed out, more human-like. Again, it fast forwards to us being visited by Saburo Arasaka, but he looks younger, which leads us to think that this happened a long time ago. While we're being interrogated by an agent of sorts, the aftermath of the detonation of the bomb we planted can be seen in the background. A blast from the past. Everything that's happening now leads us to believe that they're planning a fate worse than death, as they say. Once more, everything fades to black. We gain some sort of sense, as if we're stuck in some sort of virtual universe, but in this place, it's only you and a mysterious figure. Soon enough, we learn that this space is within our own mind, and the figure is Johnny Silverhand, the terrorist that supposedly died in 2023. That was 54 years ago. We regain consciousness in a landfill, literally crawling our way out of the dirt. We see Deshaun looking like he's being forced to find us by none other than Saburo's bodyguard, Takamura. He gets us out of there, saving our asses, although he is being chased by what looks like Arasaka ninjas, which call him traitor, meaning that he's most likely being framed by Yorinobu. He takes us to Vic, since we're on death's door. Vic manages to stabilize us, but not before breaking some big news. Although we got shot in the head, by all means, we should have died, but the biochip Jackie slotted into us actually started repairing the damage done, and although it brought us back to life, it doesn't come without a nasty side effect. The biochip has the engram of Johnny Silverhand. This engram is overriding our mind as if it was a tumor that it had to eliminate. Soon enough, V will be no more. Our body will belong to the construct of Silverhand. That's unless we do something about it. Before I speak on the rest of the game, there's a lot I really loved about the intro to this game. It displayed the complexity of this world, it provides a sneak peek into the life inside of a night city, the different factions within it, and how different your worldview is depending on where you come from. That I loved. But I have an enormous issue. The first act and intro to this game is very long, averaging around 3 to 4 hours. On one hand, I understand why that is. It is a complex world, and I can see how one of the reasonings for that length was how it was important for the player to be exposed to the immense aspect of this universe and all the intricacies within it. On the other hand, a lot of the intro is just talking. While that's not a problem for some, my ADHD brain cells struggled as they itched to kill and eviscerate the guts out of my enemies. Yes, I have issues. Although, with all that in mind, I understand it. At first, this game can look like a GTA set in the future, and I acknowledge that in the beginning I thought about it that way too. But after playing it, this game's plot, story, and lore are incredible and imperative to making this game as good as it is. I would argue that it's one of the best games I've ever played. I just didn't expect it to be. The rest of the game then has the stage set to determining how V is going to fix this. How is he going to find a way to remove the very chip that, although saved his life, now is slowly draining it from him? Cyberpunk has a very interesting way of letting you uncover the story. It's not hand-holding at all in the sense that you can pursue any mission, any side quest at any given time. Which I have to say confused me a bit, because after playing the entire campaign and feeling like I had made the choices I resonated with, I got to one of the bad endings. The issue I faced was that I had thought that there was a linear path towards the endgame, but within the sets of quests along that path, my dialogue options and choices would determine the result of my playthrough, everything else being a semi-relevant side quest. But that's not true at all. The game has a branching, complex line of quests, and they all lead to different results, depending on who you make connections with, who you romance, who you find an alliance and friendship in. Some of these endings are more similar than others, but even then, a completely fascinating and incredible experience that even at the point of making this video, I'm still experiencing, partly because I need to redeem myself. Talking about characters, one of the ones who gets the most screen time is none other than Johnny Reeves. He's a bastard. The first thing he does after finding out he's stuck in your head is to try and kill you and bang your head against the window. Several times. Until you get knocked out. He's not that bad though. Along the way, I'd say we become pretty good friends. Hard not to, considering he's in our head 24/7. It's not like we have any other choice. The writing of Johnny is actually pretty good. Apart from having the few lines here and there that feel slightly forced, Keanu plays a hell of a role. Johnny is a bit of an anarchist and a nihilist. He hates organized forms of government and organizations, and trust me, he'll tell you all about it. It would probably be in his Tinder bio. The interesting thing is that I can imagine how hard it must be for the guy. I mean, he's stuck in someone else's head, he wakes up and suddenly it's been 54 years since he's actually been alive. You know, in his real body. But from the way he acts, you wouldn't think that he's actually that bothered. While in reality, he's a bit of your archetypal male where emotions are not supposed to be shown, so it's not like we'd find out anyway. He does have his moments of vulnerability throughout the story, especially relating to people who he used to know, and I dare say even love, people like Rogue and Alt. Long story, I can't really cover everyone. But one of the best parts of the game to me is how philosophical it can get. For example, in the game, Johnny's construct is referred to as if it had been transferred from his actual physical mind into an electronic device. But the question is the engram really him? Is the Johnny in our head the same Johnny that blew Arasaka all those years ago? The same one who sang his angry songs and had a band? Or is he just a copy? Is he as authentic as a file you can copy and paste on your computer? It's pretty hard to tell. He feels real, he acts real, he portrays himself as having feelings and memories as a real human does, but in a society and, well, in a world where other people's feelings and memories can be experienced through a VR headset, who's to say what's real and what's not? The lines get pretty blurry, especially in a city where there's no real concern for hedonistic behavior and ethical technological progress. This whole philosophical conundrum brings me to my favorite side quest in the entire game, the Don't Lose Your Mind side quest. Why is it my favorite? Because it has two things: humor and a good fucking story. The side quest chain begins with when you finish the first act of the game, you're tasked with picking up your car after it was delivered due to it being impounded. As soon as you get into the car, another vehicle rams into you while shouting. Poetic choice of words. You then get a text from Delamain, the same service we used to get taken to Compagnie Plaza, apologizing for the damage this has caused to our vehicle and to pay a visit to the headquarters about this issue. You get to the HQ and loads of other people are complaining about the AI. Delamain asks us to speak in private and breaks down the situation for us. He believes that due to a virus in his system, this has led to multiple vehicle failures, resulting in rogue AIs behaving as they wish and no longer being controlled by one central AI. Essentially, he wants us to find them and bring them back to re-establish their connection. The missing cabs are all over town, so we better get to work. Once you start finding them one by one, you realize that they're all pretty different. There's an anxious one, there's a creepy one, there's a paranoid one, and there's one that even impersonates GLaDOS from Portal.
I hate you so much.
Long story short, you're able to find them all and re-establish a connection to the main Delamain, so they make their way back and you get a good amount of money for it. That is, until later. A few days later, Delamain contacts you once more. It seems like the virus got to him and he needs our help getting things back to normal. We make our way to the HQ and everything seems to be wrong. There's doors opening and closing on their own, and the whole garage is hostile and out to kill us. After successfully avoiding death, Delamain asks us to reset the main AI core and delete the AI so that everything goes back to standard mode of operation. But Johnny brings up a good point. What guarantee do we have that by deleting the supposed rogue Delamain AIs, we're actually murdering individual personalities? What if they're not viruses, and literally have their own identities, wants, desires, and fears? It's one of those questions that no one can really answer, and I find that fascinating. Well, I ended up freeing the AIs. It felt like the right thing to do. One of them even sent me a picture from the moon. Feels quite nice. On the topic of favorites, we've got to talk about the music. It's one of the best, if not the best part of the game, and it fits damn well with the overall theme of Cyberpunk. From the chaotic rock and electronic music to more melodic, relaxing chill and synthwave songs, you have music for everyone. You may not have DJ Kara from GTA 5 dropping hits like Lady by Mojo, but you can't beat Radio 88.9 Pacific Dreams when this song comes on. I'm not going to go into too much detail on side characters because I'd love for you to experience them yourself, but CD Projekt Red has gone to incredible lengths to flesh all of the characters out. I'm honestly in awe of how individual they all feel. Some you can romance, some you cannot. Regardless of this, their individuality shines through their dialogue, their temper, their preferences, and their stories. Most games with side quests tend to give you some generic NPC heading out a quest to do some mundane and generic activity, and that's that. Not here. Everything and everyone has a purpose. It just really makes you understand and come to terms with the fact that, you know what, sometimes games take 8, 9, 10 years to be developed, and if that's what it takes for it to be a full and non-half-assed experience, then I'm happy. Because in truth, I will remember this game for a real good while. I'll remember the people in it, some of the funny lines and the memorable quests. Also, knowing myself, I'll probably replay the game at least once a year. Phantom Liberty takes place in the middle of the normal campaign. An unknown person contacts you asking for help, requesting you to head to Dogtown. Upon your arrival, you seem to go under some sort of net running attack by a woman named Songbird. She's a netrunner employed by Rosalind Myers, the president of the United States of America. She needs your help since the plane they're on has been hacked and is due to crash into Dogtown. But help in Night City doesn't come without a cost. This is where V comes in. She offers help with the relic stuck in V's head in exchange for our assistance with this tricky predicament. We help Songbird, she'll allegedly fix our issue preventing the biochip from taking over V's consciousness. It sounds too good to be true. Is she telling the truth? I guess we'll have to find out. But for a bit of context, you need to understand what Dogtown is. And no, it's not a city full of happy puppies. Dogtown is a sub-district of the Pacifica District in Night City. It's a completely walled-off area and is completely controlled by the militia group Barghest. Barghest is led by the ex-NUSA Colonel Kurt Hansen, who opposed the Arvin Accord, which was a peace treaty agreed between the NUSA and the Free States of North America. Due to his unwillingness to obey his orders to leave the area after the agreement was signed, he set up shop in Dogtown, making it a completely independent state and making sort of a military tyrant. Also turned Dogtown into a combat zone, meaning that it's an area free of any sort of formal government or law enforcement. But back to infiltrating Dogtown. Songbird then guides us through what seems like forgotten abandoned industrial buildings, which leads us to a stadium inside Dogtown. After V is led to a vantage high point at the stadium, Songbird points to the aircraft both her and the president are on board of, so that he can see where the crash is bound to occur. Although, something unexpected happens. Missiles are launched at the aircraft as it still has a long way till it was supposed to crash, resulting in speeding the process up and making the situation a bit more chaotic. We rush to help and save both of them, only to be surprised by a swarm of enemies belonging to Barghest scoping out the area. As we maneuver around all of them, we finally reach the site of the crash where seemingly all passengers are dead, except we get surprised by a supreme ass-whooping by President Myers, which makes me wonder if she actually needed saving in the first place. Hashtag girl power. We then need to make our way out by being stealthy, and if it comes to it, a bit trigger happy, or in my case I prefer to use sharp throwable knives. A lot of killing happens. We keep moving through, mostly abandoned buildings while being given directions by Songbird. We get to a museum that's kept under pretty good conditions, and unfortunately our moment of respite is brief since more enemies catch up to us. As we think we're about to be overwhelmed, Somi, which is Songbird's real name, hacks a behemoth of a chimera robot who helps us get rid of the imminent threat. Although, it backfires. Somi seems to lose control of the robot and it seemingly backfires as damage to herself. One issue though, we now have no Netrunner and we have a mad chimera robot chasing after us. This segment is actually incredible since it ends up being quite the opposite, in my opinion, of what the beginning of the core game was like. It's full of action, we run from the robot that is hell-bent on wearing our skin as a coat, we then have a little bit of a quick time event, and we get dropped straight into the first boss battle of the DLC. I liked it, but it was a bit underwhelming. It's not overly different from what can be experienced in the core game, but it's not too challenging. I felt like I could have stood still and kept shooting and I would have still killed the boss. Although I was not playing on the highest difficulty, normal mode should have still have provided a bit of a moderate challenge. But moving on. After making it out alive, miraculously, may I add, we find a safe place, which is where Somi was directing us to all along. Meanwhile, Myers and us can only speculate what happened to Somi, since she had now been MIA for an alarming amount of time. But the biggest wonder is if Hansen got his hands on her. Myers then breaks out the news that there is an old sleeper agent in Dogtown, his name being Solomon Reed. He should be able to help us navigate the city and investigate what has happened and hopefully find an end to the predicament we find ourselves in. Personally, I like the intro to the DLC a lot more than the original game. It started with a bang. It has intrigue, has questions, and has a whole lot of oh shit. The original game's intro was a lot more of a slow burner, easing us into the characters, the story, and setting us up to understand the main plot point. Both intros are good in their own right. You could argue that one is attempting to be more entertaining from the get-go, since a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of introducing us to the story and the world of Cyberpunk is done in the core game, while the DLC doesn't have to live up to those standards, since we're already familiar with our predicament and why Somi chose V as the one to get both Myers and her out of Dogtown. That's the fairest argument I can think of. The lowest point of the intro was just how easy the boss was to kill and the little quick time event before the main boss fight. I actually like quick time events, but it just felt slightly meh. Now, since my primary focus is a lot more on the main portion of the story, I just want to do a quick mention of the side quests and the new relic skill tree. The side quests are great. I'd say the level of quality is the same as the core game. CD Projekt Red has always been known for delivering good quality DLCs and not a half-assed product that is a little addition to the main game. They're fun and flesh out the Dogtown portion of the map. It brings a bit more to life than simply having a new small district created for the sake of a little bit of extra story and gameplay. And the Relic skill tree is another addition in a DLC. It's an additional skill tree, and it's quite simply, and in my honest opinion, the only underwhelming aspect of the DLC. The core issue that I have with it is that some of the skills, especially the one where you can find your opponent's weakness, feel quite overpowered and unbalanced as opposed to the core game. But it's still an appreciated addition to the game, but I still think the game would have been fine without it. But moving on with the story. As I've said before, we end the intro with Myers mentioning Solomon Reed as a sleeper agent who might be able to help us. But who is he, actually? We get to start finding out really soon. When we get to a phone we use to contact Reed, a meeting is arranged in public where Reed probes us to make sure we're not actually playing him. Soon enough, he deems us safe and we get to see him for the first time, revealing him to be played by Idris Elba. Side note, I like the acting on both his part and Keanu Reeves, but I can't help but find famous faces in video games just a little bit distracting from the actual game. It's like it pulls me into real life a little bit too much, but that's a me problem. We head out with him so he can formally meet with Myers, and this encounter really fleshes out their relationship. As it turns out, Solomon worked for Myers back during the war, but upon its abrupt end, Myers actually abandoned Reed in Dogtown. Why that is? Well, we actually don't know yet. Additionally to that, Reed is actually the person who recruited So-Mi to begin with, so there definitely seems to be some sense of an emotional link there. But not only that, both him and Myers are strangely overly worried about So-Mi's whereabouts, and what I suspect, how she might be used against us. Another key person that gets involved in the story and also has a relation to Solomon is Alex Xenakis. When we first meet her, she's as happy as an Oompa Loompa. That's until Solomon shows up. As soon as he does, her demeanor changes completely. She's ready to either kick him out of the bar or shoot him on sight. It's a bit of a coin toss which one she's likely to do, to be honest. Her relation to Solomon is actually quite interesting. She used to be an aspiring braindance actress. Unknown to her, the studio she joined was actually a federal front for an intelligence agency. Her acting skills led her to be recruited by Solomon, and as a consequence leading her to play a part in the Unification War alongside Reed. When the war ended, both Reed and Alex were basically abandoned in Dogtown, but the FIA made a cover story on Reed, making it seem as if he had died as a condition of agreement to a ceasefire between both the NUSA and Arasaka. Songbird orchestrated a fake death of Reed at the request of the government. Reed accepted it as a risk that goes with the job and remained a loyal sleeper agent in Night City for the past 7 years. After all of these emotional and bonding reconnections, we actually focus on finding Songbird. But how do you find a netrunner? Well, you use another netrunner. In this case, we need to talk to a reputable but rather nasty looking guy that goes by the name of Slider. We basically tear his lair from the inside out, and then we get to have a nice little chat, or rather coerce him into helping us in exchange for letting him take a couple more breaths. He begrudgingly does so. He's able to establish our connection back up with Songbird, and we find out that she's actually been kidnapped by Hansen and his men. But she's safe, at least as long as she does what she's told. She tells us where we'll be able to find her in a few days during a party Hansen is throwing, which is at the main and tallest skyscraper in Dogtown, which goes by the name of Black Sapphire. After the connection gets cut, Slider short-circuits because Songbird had initially used something called the Black Wall to establish a connection between us and her. The Black Wall is a firewall of sorts created by Netwatch, which is an online policing organization. In a nutshell, the Black Wall keeps the net safe from rogue AIs, preventing them from breaking through into the rest of cyberspace and causing a whole lot of shit. What I mean by a whole lot of shit is that if these rogue AIs got free, they would most likely kill humans, and very easily as well. In a world where everyone and everything is connected in some way, shape, or form, these AIs could easily tap into any hardware implanted into anyone or anything, kill it, or take over complete control. That's why it is against international law to not touch or mess with the Black Wall, since the consequences could be so marvelous. Getting into the Black Sapphire is not as easy of a task as walking into Konpeki Plaza. We need to call in a favor from Mr. Hands, the local fixer in Dogtown, but in Night City fashion, no favors are done without anything in return. so we must do 3 gigs for Mr. Hands before he provides us with any helpful information on how to crash Hansen's quinceañera. Once we get these gigs done, we get the opportunity to meet Mr. Hands in person. Typically he refrains from sharing his identity, but since we have proved ourselves useful and trustworthy, we get to see beyond the veil. While we were busy putting in work for us, he managed to find blueprints for the Black Sapphire, which include any weaknesses to look out for in order to infiltrate the building successfully. All we have to do now is come up with the plan. Now that we have the info we needed, we meet up with both Reed and Alex. Alex comes with a plan for infiltration. V is to infiltrate through some forgotten and submerged underground tunnels right beneath the Black Sapphire, while Solomon takes one of the garage entrances. Once that's done, we move up through 2 separate elevators, where we're in charge of sniping any threats out of Reed's way as he moves to the rendezvous point. Not gonna lie, this mission's great. I like Mission Impossible type of quests that need a bit of stealth and feel like you have to be super careful in order not to mess things up. Once that's done, we change into fitting attire to a party of this caliber. Once we get to the party, we mingle for a bit, enjoy a drink or two, and soon enough Songbird is the one that makes contact. We head up to meet her, and surprisingly, she does not look like a prisoner. I'm not really used to prisoners dressing up in flashy dresses. We only have a limited amount of time to speak to her, but she ends up breaking the news that she has a plan for her escape. However, it's not that simple. See, Songbird tapping into the black wall has its consequences. In this case, she's actually dying. Nevertheless, she needs something that Hansen owns, something she believes will cure both her and V, meaning that, for now, she will need to remain Hansen's captive while we steal the identity of 2 other netrunners that happen to be siblings who are supposed to work together with her at some point in the near future. If we manage to do that successfully, we get to rescue So-Mi and get rid of Hansen. Fingers crossed. It all sounds nice and dandy apart from one detail. Solomon knows Songbird, and he senses something fishy in this whole ordeal. He's been backstabbed by So-Mi before, and he's aware of the patterns in her behavior, meaning that this is leading him to believe, initially, she had an agreement with Hansen to crash the plane into Dogtown, allowing Hansen to get Myers in exchange for the cure that So-Mi needs. She then contacted V as a contingency plan in case things went south, so that she could be rescued if that never came to happen, promising a cure for his issues as well, since that would be a strong enough motivator for him to do so. At some point during the party, while we're busy analyzing the netrunners whose identity we're impersonating to get close to Hansen actually drops by and confirms Reed's suspicions, adding to the mix a few threats directed to us. Mainly that if Myers doesn't give up on So-Mi, he's going to leak the fact that So-Mi has stabbed into the black wall to the public, meaning that the public would then know that Myers put every person on the planet in danger in breaking international law. Knowing Myers, the pressure that would put on her would most likely cause another war, and that wouldn't be really good for business, now would it? Again, we make it out of the party alive, by some miracle. Reed needs a day or two to come up with a plan with Alex, and then we meet them back at the hideout under the bar. We show up and they'll fill us out on the plan, which is the following. First, we hijack the rental car the twin netrunners are using in order to kidnap them. Second, we assume their identities and impersonate them in the meeting with Hansen. Third, one of us goes in with So-Mi to help hack the neural matrix and get access codes for Hansen, while Alex will stay with Hansen in order to execute him or poetically shoot him in the face. Fourth, we get the hell out. On our way to hijack the terminal that will gain us access to the twins' car, Songbird surprisingly contacts us. She seems very secretive. She wants to speak later that evening in a secluded place, away from prying eyes and prickling ears. Once we make it to the spot, she opens up. She tells us what it was like coming into the agency at the age of 19, coerced into becoming an agent by Reed by giving her 2 options. Either she joins the agency or she gets reported to Netwatch. She confesses to cutting a deal with Hansen, exchanging Myers' life for the neural matrix and helping him get some dirt on the NUSA. She knew Hansen would betray her, that's where we enter the equation. The conversation gets deeper, she tells us she trusts us and alongside it her plan to escape. We are to do everything exactly as planned between us, Alex and Reed, but we escape from both Hansen and Reed at the same time. Songbird then hopes to take the neural matrix to a clinic where they are going to run experiments on her and hopefully find a cure for us as well. As I've mentioned before, Reed knows something's not right, and he prepares for such eventuality. He wants us to use an implant that will allow us to knock Songbird out long enough for him to bring her to a safe place and question her. Why she did the things she did and betrayed the FIA and Myers, and then leaving Myers to do with Songbird as she wishes. The truth is that I feel like Reed is a loyal lapdog. Even when he's the one betrayed by its master, the NUSA in this case, he doesn't know how else to live but by its rules and directions. He keeps saying how he cares so much for Songbird and Alex, but he got them both in the game. literally coercing Songbird in the process, all the while using the argument of care and emotional bond as an excuse. The thing is, I can believe that he both cares for these people and wants to be a man of duty, but they come in direct conflict of each other, and he's done this job a lot longer than he has known either of them. Without it, Reed has no identity, meaning that his duty to the FIA trumps any sense of loyalty he has to either Alex or Songbird, or us for that matter, even if he's unaware of it. With that being said, the plan then comes into fruition. We track the vehicle the Cassell twins use, we take control of their vehicle, and kidnap them. That's until the kidnapping turns into flat-out murder at the hands of both Alex and Reed. Just another detail they left out. We take on their identities and head out to the stadium where the heist is supposed to go down. On the way, reminding ourselves of the most important details of the identity we've taken on. In this case, Emmerich Cassell. Just as an example, he doesn't drink at all, and he stores his memories in databanks external to his actual mind, and we need to keep that in mind when talking with Hansen, as he's likely to probe and test us. We arrive, and it's pretty much smooth sailing. We make it past security, hand in our weapons, and sit down with Hansen while Somi preps the neural matrix. Somi comes up, and then we, alone, go down with her to do the thing this whole meeting was initially about, or at least make it seem as we are. At this point, we have a choice. Either we betray Reed and flee with Somi, or betray Somi and follow Reed's plan. This may be my second playthrough, but I'd always choose to betray Reed. Not only would it be my choice if I were V, he simply has more to gain from it if Somi is telling the truth. Regardless, I don't align myself with someone like Reed. It's almost as if he self-flagellates for the sake of duty, in the name of a master who's amused while he does it. But moving on, what happens next is craziness. We signal Alex to go ahead, she kills Hansen, Somi taps into the black wall once more to turn the stadium's defense system on our side, and to figure a way out while this happens. Alex realizes that we've betrayed them. We then head out through the door in the lab and fight through wave after wave of enemies, leading us to the sewage system, and when we make it out, we're out of Dogtown, in some homeless camp in Night City. So me and us separate into two different cars, so that we're harder to track. She lets us know she'll be in touch since this is not the end just yet. Somi gets in contact, but she doesn't sound too good, as if the disease has sped up tenfold since we escaped the stadium. She gives us coordinates on where to meet and find her struggling in the back of a van, hanging by a thread. She breaks the plan down to us. We head to the lunar airport and we're to sneak into an area that is currently in construction after getting past security. Once we make it there, we let her in through one of the side doors and try our best to escort her to one of the aircrafts that should lead her to the moon, where a team might be able to develop a prototype to both help us and Somi. And that's if no hiccups happen. But they always do. First, we need to get through security, which is pretty straightforward. Somi hacks the camera as to not trigger any alarms, and once we're past it, we need to find some sort of maintenance tunnel so we can move to another terminal. We find that in the bathroom. That leads us to a heavily guarded side of the terminal, still under construction, and all we gotta do is get past them and make our way to the roof. We get to the roof, and throw an emergency fire hose to pull Somi up with us, which we do successfully. But from this point on, things only get trickier. Songbird detects some sort of encrypted communication which only so happens to be NUSA comms. Myers and Reed are both here and coming for her. We manage to hide ourselves away in some ventilation shafts and eavesdrop Myers talking to Reed. She's not happy. With Reed, the situation, any of it. Songbird is too important to slip away from Myers' grasp. She knows too much. She's done too much. And Myers would rather have her dead than not have her at all. So that's the order. Myers launches an all-out assault on the terminal and everyone in it, including the security at the lunar airport. This has to be one of the coolest sections in the game. It's all-out action and the music is bopping like hell. We make a run to the train station, supposed to take us directly to the aircraft, and defend Somi while she hacks the train to pick us up. We get swarmed with enemies, and it feels like it will never end. But then our backs are against the wall. When seemingly all luck had ran out for us, Somi uses us as a conduit to use the black wall against all soldiers and aircraft around. We get up and make our way up to the train while killing any remaining threats. Finally, a moment of peace. At this stage, Songbird is at death's door, and when you're ready to die, honesty doesn't seem too difficult. And she confesses. She's tired of betraying people. Reed, Hansen, Myers, and us. The truth is that the neural matrix can only be used once, and Songbird is instrumental for that being the case, meaning that we were the means to an end. The dialogue choices allow us to be angry, at peace, or to even have a less chance of surrendering to Somi to Reed. I personally chose to help her till the end. Why? She got recruited by a company through coercion, meaning she had no choice. Any ounce of emotion or relationship Reed might have had with her, it did not have a solid foundation if it started like that. Also, Reed doesn't have an identity if he doesn't have duty. It's like he doesn't know what to live for or how to live without orders. I feel as if Somi used everyone around her because she felt that was the only way out. You either use or get used. And she's been used this whole time by Reed, Myers, Hansen, and to a certain degree, even us. We only chose to help her because she promised to save us. We're not so innocent in this situation. To top this off, Songbird's last use of the Black Wall has completely exhausted her, so we need to carry her to the aircraft. When we get there, Reed's waiting for us. We have a nice little chat with him, but then I decide to shoot him. He'd never let us go, and neither would Myers. I actually like that he wasn't a boss fight. I feel like it would have made a disservice to him as a character, especially considering that he is human and doesn't have a huge amount of implants that could explain him enduring an overwhelming amount of bullets and knives to the head. We finally drop her to the shuttle and watch her fly away from the terminal with a very reflective Johnny Silverhand. This is probably one of the best moments of writing for Johnny. You get used to him being cynical, and for the first time he's impressed by someone and contemplating his own story and whether he had the conviction Somi had to get things done. She flies away, and that's that. And there we have it. Overall, this experience was incredible, and there's a lot I didn't mention. It's a really hard task to choose what to highlight and what to leave you guys to find out on your own, and that's if you do end up being prompted to playing the game because of my videos. There's a lot left to uncover, a lot of compelling stories hidden within side quests, gigs, mini stories written away in little articles. This world feels very much alive, as opposed to what we first experienced when it came out in 2020. I would urge you to experience this game if you can. It may not be for you, that's entirely possible, but it'll be one of the ones that I'll return to time and time again. No playthrough feels the same. You can evolve your characters in completely different ways, you can forge completely different relationships with in-game characters, and lead to completely different results and dialogue options. It may have taken a while for CD Projekt Red to get there, and it pissed a lot of people off on the way there, but the game is good and worth playing. You will not be wasting your time. On another note, if you made it here, thank you very much for watching and giving me who knows how much of your time. It took a lot of effort to put the video together, but I hope that you enjoyed the long format. I'm thinking of playing with this type of format a lot more since I actually enjoy deep diving into topics. Comment how you feel about the video, the game, subscribe if you wish, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next one.